Om Aganatimrandasyam Ganagana Salakya Chaksurun Militam Yanatashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yanabhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sta Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Shri Vishakan Vitam Stam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pangom Mandir Madir Gati Matsavashaparam Bojo Radha Madana Mohanam Sriman Rasaram Vivam Sivana Karsan Venusanopi Gopinata Sriyasinaham Divyadvrindaranya Kapadrumada Srimad Radnagara Shima Sanishto Sri Sri Radha Shira Govinda Presta Lavihi Seva Manushmarami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmanya Taya Chaji Gaditaya Krishnaya Govinaya Namo Namaha Mangalam Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Rajaja Mangalam Panurikaksha Mangalaya Tano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmahi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Pachodiyatihim Om Mahadevi Chavidmahi Vishnu Padnyati Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Pachodiyatihim Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Sarasari Hari Priya Namastubhyam Namastubhyam Hariharim Tapta Kanchana Gaunagi Radhi Vindavaneshwari Vishavanasute Devi Pranamani Pari Pari Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Dev Maheshwara Guru Shaksha Parabrahma Tashmai Sri Guru Namaha Durgame Pati Miyanda Shaskarapate Shakripaya Saranadu Santu Santovanambaram Mukam Kavit Pakariyan Savarasmarane Pangagilanga De Katharagane Nama Om Vishnu Panaya Krishna Pasnaya Bhutare Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanam Namaste Sarasati Devi Guruvani Pacharini Nirvishesa Sanyavadi Paskata Desar Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome the day after Independence Day. Yesterday our talk was Declaration of Dependence. I had a nice feedback from Govinda. He texted me. He thought it was a powerful talk. Thank you for that, Govinda. Good morning, Natasha. Hare Krishna to you and Larry. Brent. Hare Krishna. Good morning, Jay. Good morning, everybody. Jean never misses. Who else do we have here? And Rob, of course, is with me. Maheshwari, thank you very much for joining. We're going to move forward a little bit. We were discussing the sixth verse for multiple series, multiple episodes. We're going to jump forward to what could be the most famous verse of the whole Bhagavatam, at least as far as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is concerned. He explained this verse extensively both to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya as well as it was the keystone of his instructions to Sanatana Goswami. He talked about this verse for days and days. He had 150 different explanations for this verse. Practically speaking, the whole of Krishna consciousness can be contained within this verse or spinned out from this verse. It's the 10th verse in the 7th chapter, the first canto of the Bhagavatam. This is our first of many episodes undoubtedly on it. And I'm going to suggest that we continue tomorrow with Chaitanya Charan for part 2 of this, what has become famously known as the Atmarama verse, spoken by Sudha Goswami, the head of the sages of Naimisharanya. And here it is. Atmaramas Tamuneo Nigranti Api Uru Krame Kurbanti Haitukim Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Gana Hari. Each one of these words, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had extensive meetings, extensive explanation. He went on and on and on, hour after hour, day after day, just squeezing the nectar from this verse. You have a stick of sandalwood, you have a pestle, a rough, round piece of stone. You moisten, put a little water. I don't know if it's called a pestle, mortar maybe. And then you take that stick of sandal and you rub it across the rough surface with water, and it creates a pulp. It creates sandalwood pulp, which during the heat of the Indian summer, you can pat it on your forehead. It's incredibly refreshing and cooling. The Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu churned this verse, the various syllables, the various words, the various meanings. He rubbed them together. He played them against each other. He derived newer meanings. And as Sarvabhauma Gadacharya heard the ongoing explanations of Lord Chaitanya, Sanatan Goswami, in rapt attention, heard the commentaries of Lord Chaitanya on this verse. They got complete refreshing. They got complete relief from the burning heat of this material existence. And the translation of the verse is that Atmarama Stumunyo, those who are self-satisfied, they derive pleasure in the soul. They don't need the stimulation of the senses in connection with the external objects of the senses in order to get so-called satisfaction. They don't go there anymore. They've given up the pursuit of pleasure through the senses and through the external world. And they're situated in the Atma. The Atma is the inner self, the living force, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhyagai, that which animates each and every body, and that which once it leaves the body makes the body no longer useful. Once the living force, the Atma, has exited the body is just a shell that deteriorates over the course of the next few days. Atmaramas are those categories of men who are in pursuit of the absolute truth, who've turned their backs on material endeavors. They're committed to the path of self-realization. As such, they're free from material bondage. They're no longer under the influence of ignorance and illusion. And what has arisen from that purified state is the overwhelming desire to render unalloyed devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what this verse means is that after liberation, after one has lost one's taste for romance and narrations, and stories and appetites, and all the things of which drama and suspense and good literature is made up of, after one realizes the shortcomings, all those areas of endeavor, one then graduates to hearing about the pastimes, activities, and adventures of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, both in the spiritual world and as those pastimes were enacted in this planet as well. Those qualities of the Lord, those stories that have to do with the pastimes of the Lord, have nothing to do with material sense gratification. They are relished by those in the liberated state. In the second line here, the word urukrama means. That means one who's a great transcendental actor. Krama means step, and urukram means one who became famous by presenting himself as one way and then cheating the king Bali Maharaj by taking some gigantic steps. The Lord, in his incarnation as the dwarf Brahmana, Vamana, came before Bali Maharaj. Bali Maharaj was the king of the demons. He led the demons. They'd roared up from the lower planets and overwhelmed the planets of the demigods, deposed the demigods, and they were in control of universal affairs. Now, in order to redress this anomaly, in order to bring things back to normal, where the devotees are in control and the non-devotees are pushed downward, kept where they belong, the Lord appeared before Bali Maharaj, who is the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. Bali is a devotee, but he had taken that birth as the king of the demons. Being obliged by his constituency, he conquered the heavenly planets, deposed the demigods, but he really wanted to please Lord Vishnu. His most innermost desire was some or other to please Lord Vishnu and get free from all the complications of so-called worldly prosperity. He says, Adahamatma pripashtapantika devenantam pashabam inam kritantika vartiji papyam yayaduam stirnaviribhutire. After he had been divested of all his opulence, he thanked the Lord. He got down on his knees and he bowed his head before the dwarf incarnation of the Lord, who had cheated him of everything. But far from feeling betrayed, far from having a pity party, he thanked the Lord for having taken the burden of overlordship off of his shoulders, for having cheated him of the illusion of kingdom, wealth, fame, opulence, influence, bodily beauty, connections with family and dynasty. He says, Atmarama, most people spend their whole lives embroiled, entangled in politics, diplomacy, finances, career, domestic affairs, sexual relationships, family concerns, not realizing that at any moment they can be wrested, they can be extracted right from the middle of all that and thrown to who knows where. At any moment, death can come, tap us on the shoulder, especially in this day and age when life moves at such high speeds. Accidental death is more common than a natural death. More people die of unusual, unnatural epidemic diseases like cancer, AIDS, and pneumonia, from auto accidents, from drive-by shootings, from violence of all kinds and sorts. That's if you even see the light of day. 1 in 5 children is murdered even in the womb of their mother. So it's not normal anymore to live your life and die of old age in bed. It's much more normal to have your life interrupted by some violent happenstance or circumstance. Even back as far a time ago as Bali Maharaj, he alluded to the fact that all of our material opulence and wealth and prestige can be snatched away at a moment's notice. He referred to accidental death then. And even if you do live a long life and die in bed, how long was it really in the eye of eternal time? How long is a full lifespan of 70, 80, 90 years? It's just a finger click in eternity. And he said most people never get out of that. They die entangled, embroiled, thinking, oh, if I could, I just wanted to get my son married, or I wanted to leave a certain amount of money to each and every one of my kids, or I wanted to live to see the birth of my 10th grandchild. They leave this body. They're kicked out of this body with all these concerns. Yukta Shuevam Brahmatasha, Katumba Shakta Shedasha. Katumba Shakta means being insanely attached to the temporary domestic affairs. Yukta Shuevam Brahmatasha. Brahmatasha means a madman who's forgotten the Atma, forgotten the soul, become totally identified with kith and kin. It says, for Yukta Shuevam Brahmatasha, Katumba Shakta, for those mad men and women who are feverishly attached to the domestic sector, Yukta Shuevam Brahmatasha, Asha Shakta Vaikaro, Yo Priya Priyosha. Inevitably that time arrives, which is not their favorite time. They sold out the soul for finances, for home, for bodily comforts. They sold out their soul, and eventually, at the fag end of life, death appears before them, and that is not their favorite time. That is not their. Instead of being detached and eagerly seeking the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet after leaving this present body, they're full of family concerns and worries. Paranjana Maharaj, he said, Katam nu durakari duakara batishanti mayam shreyam samashabashati. Will not my family members be like passengers aboard a boat with no captain in a raging storm, without my protection, without my overlordship, without the finances and income that I generated? Will not my family members be lost in my absence, like passengers on a ship that has no compass, no means of navigation? Noram pramata kurute bikarma yad indriya priyatamana sarumaneya turabhir sanapadesharajara. People who are in so deeply with bodily domestic affairs, they'll never ever come to Krishna consciousness. The arguments, the crystal clear presentations of the sages, the knowledge between of the difference between the spirit and the body falls on deaf ears for those who are fixed and focused on material advancement and material aggrandizement. Bali Maharaj thanks the Lord with all of his heart. Thank you, Lord. If Vamana hadn't intervened and wrested everything from Bali Maharaj, he said he would have gone on and on and on to no purpose. Akarmani. Yapashed. Spiritualist sees all the material endeavors as a waste of time. Sees that although the materialists are very active, they're really doing nothing. They're going nowhere. Of course, the materialists see the spiritualists as wasting their time. The materialists see this human form of life, the purpose of it is to get money and wealth and have sex and produce children. And so from their point of view, the spiritualist is wasting his time. The spiritualist is not accomplishing anything. I remember I had a devotee friend in Utah. He had come out from Los Angeles and started a local business. And he started spending less and less time at the temple and more time in the workplace. And at one point he said to me, and I don't know, I don't think it was really typical of his overall way of thinking, but he said to me at one point, he was obviously a little bit influenced by Maya at this point. He said, Caru, he said, I've got to work hard. I've got to make a lot of money for my retirement, medical plan, kids. He said, those years I spent in devotional service, I fell behind. I looked at him like, say what? Say what? Chatva Shararam Chararam Bhajana Bhagavata Yatra Kavabara Bud Kohata Tam Bhajatam Sharama. Narada Muni says one moment in devotional service makes your life successful, whereas an entire lifetime spent in putting money in the bank and taking care of family affairs is a waste of time. Nothing has been accomplished. Every day you have a to-do list with your minivan and soccer practice and piano lessons and PTA, and you're running around. You may be so together, so efficient that every day you accomplish every item on your long to-do list, but Bhagavad Gita says you did nothing. You accomplished nothing in terms of the purpose of the human form of life. On the other hand, even a moment of devotional service means that you've launched yourself on the only path that has purpose, that has meaning, the only path that's going to give you relief from material sufferings. Otherwise, you work hard, foaming at the mouth, full of worries, full of anxieties, and then you leave this body and start the whole cycle all over again. Bali Maharaj says, Ataham Atmapari Raposhtavan Devena Dharam Pasham Idam Krita Digam Yayadurams. Thank you, my dear Lord Vamanadev, for having extracted me out of this. Vamanadev did it in extraordinary ways. I'm sure you know the story. He appeared as a little dwarf Brahmin before Bali Maharaj, while Bali Maharaj was performing a sacrifice for more domination, for more sovereignty, being prompted by his constituencies. Bali had to put up on a certain show for the demons, because if the demons had known that he was a devotee at heart, they would have mutinied, torn him apart. So he had to play his role, the role that was preordained for him according to his birth and the dynasty in which he appeared. But in his heart of hearts, he had no taste for lordship, for sovereignty of the three worlds. He just wanted to be focused and undistracted in his service for Lord Vishnu. And so when the dwarf Brahmin appeared before him, effulgent with a little umbrella, Bali Maharaj thought, this might be the Lord's way of fulfilling my prayers. And it's customary when you're the yajamana, sponsor of a sacrifice, you offer the Brahmins who happen to be there whatever they would like in charity. When Bali Maharaj offered Vamanadev, the dwarf Brahmin, whatever he liked, he said, I'd like 3 steps of land. So Bali Maharaj wanted to give him everything, and so he kind of prompted him. He said, well, really, I mean, I can give you a lot more than that. Horses, wives, I'll give you a kingdom the size of the state of Texas if you want. Ask for more, ask for more. And he's kind of like, winking, like prompting him, more. I want you to take everything. But he can't let the demons know that that's what he really wants. And he thinks Vamana is just not getting it. He's winking at him. He's like, take more, take it all. And Vamana is saying, he's saying, Yadriksha Japapanam Santushtash Varjetesakam Asantash Tribiroko Ajatentarapinam. He said, no, I don't. He said, a Brahmin who takes more than what he needs falls down. A Brahmin who accepts only what he needs gains in potency. But a Brahmin who takes more than what he needs loses potency, just like water seeps out of a cracked pot. He went on to say, he said, Yadija Chapanam Shantushtash Bhartatesham. The way of peace and happiness is to be satisfied with whatever comes your way of its own accord. Ashantushta, and the way of disturbance, Ashantushtash, Tribir Loke, he says, if you don't need it to have dominion over the three worlds, will steal your peace. It will steal your happiness because your senses are not satisfied. So indirectly, Vamana is referring to the situation of Bali Maharaj. He say, Ashantushta Triviloke. Even though you have dominion over the three worlds, that's exactly what Bali has. He has dominion over the three worlds. And he's Ashanta, he's not peaceful. He wants to give it up in the favor of service to the Lord in order to become peaceful. And Vamana is giving a hint of what's to come. He's giving a hint of what's to come. So the dialogue goes back and forth with Bali Maharaj kind of trying to prompt Vamanadev to take more than 3 steps of land. And Vamanadev sticks to the ethics of the Brahmana by not accepting anything more than what he needs. And then finally the moment comes where Bali Maharaj gives him what he wants, makes the official proclamation, okay, take your 3 steps of land. His guru, Shukracharya, tries to stop him. He tries to stop him. He says, Tribir Karmirame Vishwakaya Vertishante Vayam Kare Muda Vartishara. He says, there's more to this dwarf than meets the eye. He has an agenda. I think, in fact, because of his effulgence, he is none other than Lord Vishnu. And Lord Vishnu always takes the side. Sukracharya is arguing in a sectarian way because that's what his vision is. Lord Vishnu always takes the side of the demigods. So I'm putting 2 and 2 together. This is Vishnu. Vishnu promotes the agenda of the demigods, so you better watch out. This Sarvasham Vishnave.va this Vishnu has come to take everything away. And if you go along with it, you're a fool. Mudha vartishatati. You cannot make this proclamation if you have your best interests in heart. And Bali Maharaj basically says, I do have my best interest at heart, and that's why I'm going to give him the 3 steps of land. And then Urukram, the Lord earned his reputation as Urukram, the amazing Lord who works in supernatural ways. By his first step, this little dwarf Brahmin expanded and expanded and expanded before everyone's eyes. And when he took his first step, he covered the earth. And his second step launched out into outer space. And it pierced the outer layer of the universe. Made a hole. The universe floats in the causal ocean. And when he punctured a hole in the outer layer of the universe, the causal ocean came through. And it threatened to inundate all the 3 worlds. And Lord Shiva agreed to take the force of that water, that incoming water on his head, and then break up its destructive forcefulness, and then cause it to be the Ganges River flowing from higher to middle to lower planets. And that's another story, nevertheless. So the second step of the Lord's covered the entire universe. And then Vamanadev, he looked at Bali. He said, you promised me 3 steps, but with the first 2, I've taken everything. So how are you going to keep your promise? He says, if you don't keep your promise, you're going to go to hell. And Bali says, Yadi of Tamashoka Bhavanma Meritam Vacho Vyalikam Sarivaravade. He says, Yadi of Tamashoka Vyacharim. He says, my words, I'm the grandson of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj was a first-class, honorable devotee of the Lord with the highest character. And I am his grandson. If I say something, I don't go back on my word. I don't say something and then fail to back up what I say. So if you believe that you have one more step, then that my words be true, take your 3rd step and put it on my head. His logic was perfect. The possessor is always more valuable than the possessions. With his first 2 steps, Vamanadev had stolen, so to speak, all of Bali Maharaj's possessions. But a person of energy and a person of experience is not taken aback by such reverses. He just digs his heels in, and with that experience that he's gained from having lost everything, he then throws himself again into the enterprise and makes twice as much money as he did originally, being wiser now. Bali Maharaj said, the possessor, he can lose his possessions, but if he has energy, if he has experience, if he has intelligence, if he has connections, he can get them back again. Double. We've seen many. In fact, America is such a dynamic economy because of the bankruptcy laws, isn't it? You can start a new business. You can invest seed money in it. You can throw yourself into it, put your energy, put your expertise in it, grow it up to a certain point of time, and maybe the market circumstances change. There's a problem with the supply chain. There's a recession, and you can no longer pay your bills. In the old days, they would put you in jail. They would take you out of circulation and put you in jail. And of course, you can't pay back your debts when you're in jail, of course. So that would inhibit the economy. But nowadays, people are emboldened. They're not afraid of failure because the government has made such an arrangement by the bankruptcy laws that they can get out from under all that debt by declaring bankruptcy and start another company, and with the experience they've gained and whatever money they've stolen, they can start another company. So the effect of this is you get business people who are very, very, very good. And they're not ruined or destroyed by a bankruptcy. In fact, most successful multimillionaires have a bunch of bankruptcies behind them, and those are the stepping stones by which they got to a position of unbelievable affluence. So Bali Maharaj is saying, I conquered the kingdom once. I conquered the lower, the middle, the upper worlds once. I could do it again. I can do it again. I could do it again. I can do it again. I can do it again. As many times as you take it away, I can get it back. I have the strength. I have the forces. I have the knowledge. I have the expertise. No big deal. Every time I have to get it back, regain it, it'll be easier with what I've learned. So he says he throws it back to Vamana. They're having a little kind of repartee here. He throws it back to Vamana. If you think my words are false, Yadi Uttama Shloka, he's referring to Vamana, Uttama Shloka, which is another name for God, one who is glorified by great transcendental songs. He says, my dear Uttama Shloka, Bacho Bialikam, Bacho means his words. If you think my words have become false, then put your third step on my head. Take possession not only of what I own, but take possession of the possessor. I tender myself. You've already got my wealth. You've already got my family. You've already got my palace. You've got my possessions. But I want to give you myself. This is the innermost desire of my heart. And at this point, Bali Maharaj and Vamanadev understand each other perfectly. They're on the same page. But he still kept up the pretense for his demoniac followers. It still seems as if he was forced against his will to submit himself as a slave of the Supreme Personality. That was Bali's intention from the very beginning, but he couldn't reveal that to his demoniac followers. So as far as his followers are concerned, it looked like Bali had done everything that he could to retain possession of the kingdom, and it looked like he'd done everything he could to attain his own personal autonomy, but the Lord had outsmarted him. And again, going back to the Lord played his part to perfection that said, okay, you're mine now, and I'm going to send you to hell. So when he put his third foot on the head of Bali, he pushed down. He pushed down. He pushed down. And he pushed Bali down to one of the hellish planets. Mahatala, I think it was. Or Tapaloka, I don't know. So according to the followers of the demons, Bali Maharaj did his best, but it wasn't good enough. That Vishnu, he's always one step ahead. He was one step ahead of Hiranyaksha. He was one step ahead of Hiranyakashipu. He's always one step ahead. But the caveat was that the Lord went with Bali Maharaj, took up a post outside the palace of Bali Maharaj in the heavenly planets, and acted as his gatekeeper, acted as his door guard. Later on, there's a subsidiary story about Ravana. Ravana had become very powerful due to the benediction of Lord Shiva, and he was going around finding people with whom to fight. And he defeated just about everybody that he'd come into contact with, and he'd heard about Bali Maharaj. So he came down to the hellish planets. He stood outside of Bali Maharaj's palace and insulted him and challenged him to come out and fight. The doorman said, well, would you like to warm up? Bali Maharaj will be out in a moment, but would you like to do some sparring with me? And Ravana attacked the doorman, not realizing that it was Vishnu. And Vishnu picked him up like a rugby ball or a football and kicked him. He punted him. And after Ravana stopped bouncing and rolling, he was 10,000 miles away. So the Lord pushed Bali Maharaj down to hell to keep his face in front of his followers. But then the Lord became the servant. On the face of it, it looked like Bali was enslaved by the Lord. But the devotional understanding of it was the Lord indentured himself to Bali. The Lord put her on the line, stepped between Ravana and Bali, protected his devotee as he always promised. Kontya pratijanihi name bhakti pranashati. Threw himself between the threats and challenges and potential violence of Ravana and took care of it. Bali didn't even hear about it from within the palace where he was. This is Urukraman, one who does wonderful things to promote the cause of the demigods, to save the world from irreligion, religious discrepancies, to protect his devotees, and to curb the maliciousness and aggressiveness of those who are without God qualities. The conclusion is that Lord Vishnu is so glorious, and his activities are so amazing, that he has both created the material and the spiritual world and entered into both by his external potency and is fully in control. Aham sarvasya prabhava matasarvam iti madhva bhajanti mam buddha bhava samadhi. This is the claim that Krishna makes before his friend and disciple Arjuna, and he's declaring it through Arjuna to the world. Aham sarvasya prabhava matasarvam prabhava. Everything, both material and spiritual, has its origin in me. It all emanates from me. Iti madhva bhajanti buddha bhava samamita. And those who are wise engage in my devotional service with all of their hearts. First of all, one has to be fully convinced, based on the Vedic conclusion, that there is none higher than Krishna. Krishna himself is the source of all the demigods, of all the sages, of all the material and spiritual worlds. And once one comes to the Vedic conclusion, one once gets in agreement with all the Vedic literatures compiled by the sage Vyas, then one no longer holds back, no longer has any doubts, scruples, or reservations, but one throws oneself into the worship of Vishnu with all of their hearts. A devotional service, the uninterrupted and unmotivated, pure devotional service of the Lord, which is our standard, it's our gold standard, is engaged in after one has put aside any doubts, reservations, or scruples about the ultimate supremacy of the Lord. And that is a position which is arrived at after understanding the conclusion of all the Vedic literatures. It's not a sentimental position. It's not a position that's taken up by emotion or by mental speculation. One who is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is right in the middle of all the Vedic conclusions, that there is no other source, there is no other supreme controller other than Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appeared as the son of Devaki. Now, Krishna's expansion of an expansion of expansion, Narayan, is the source of the entire material world. Nara means living beings, and Ayan means who holds them within one's abdomen. The spiritual world, the abode of Krishna and the original Narayan expansions and avatars, is ever existent. The definition of the spiritual world is that it is ever existent, self-effulgent. But there's another world which is temporary. It comes and goes. Bhutva bhutva pralayate. According to the errant desires of the living being, there is an alternative world to which they go when they see their interests as diverging from the interests of the Lord. In one purport, Prabhupada describes the material world as like a fair. In the medieval times, they didn't have Walmarts. They didn't have brick and mortar superstores. They had fairs, and once a month, the fair would come to your area from another region. And for a weekend or a week, however long, they would set up tents. The merchants would put up their stalls. So you couldn't go 24 hours a day down the road to Walmart. You had to wait a month. But on a appointed day or 2 or 3 days every month, every merchant would come with every imaginable needed item, You could shop once a month, twice a month. Now, after the whole affair was over and it was time to move to another place, everything would be packed up and it would go away. So it comes and it goes. All right. So the whole material world is compared to one of these traveling bazaars that is not always here. It comes, stays for some time, and then it goes. And Vishnu, or Narayan, is the one who organizes that. He's the one who organizes the coming and going of the material world. From him, Brahma, the Brahmas come, who create the worlds. From Narayan, the Shivas come, that when it's time to pack everything up and move to another location, Shiva's in charge of that. So this Narayan, who is the basis for everything in this temporary material world, is a portion of a portion of a portion of Krishna. Devotees who worship Krishna, firmly established in the Vedic inclusions. Of the 28 Upanishads, of the 108 Upanishads, the 24th one is called the Narayan Upanishad. Just listen to this. Om Saha Navavatu Sahara Bhritu Saha Viryam Karavahe Tejasvam Mashnum Vishrum Shanti 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 Omata Purusha Havai Narayana Kamayata Prajayasi. The Supreme Person is Narayan. He's created the Prajapatis, the progenitors of mankind. Narayana Paro Jayate. He's the life air within each every living being. Manas Santvendriya. Narayan, from Narayan comes the minds and the senses of all. Kam Vayura Jyoti Pracha. From Narayan comes light. From Narayan comes air. Prithvi Vishvasha Dharini. It is Narayan who creates the earth and sustains the earth and the entire universe in which the earth is positioned. Narayana Brahma Jayate. From Narayan comes Brahma. Narayana Rudra Jayate. From Narayan comes Shiva. Narayana Tindra Jayate. The senses come from Narayana. Narayana Prajapati Prajayate. All the Prajapatis. Narayana Rudra Bashava. The sages, the Vasus, Rudra, Shiva, they all come. Narayana Samut Padyate, Narayana Pavartate, Narayana Pliyate. Omata Nityo Narayana. Of all the eternal living beings, the topmost is Narayana. Above Brahma, Brahma Narayana. Shiva Narayana. Above Indra, Shakrasha Narayana. Dwabi Pritvi Cha Narayana. Kalascha Narayana. The directions come from Narayana. Up, Urdhva comes from Narayan. Up, Adashya, down, comes from Narayan. Antar, Bahist, inside, comes from Narayan. Outside comes from Narayana Vigamsham, Yatabotam, Yakshchaparam, Nishkalako, Naranjano, Nivikapo, Nirakara. Sudha, everything that's pure, comes from Narayan. Eko Narayana, Nadutiya Kashtit. Before Narayan, there's nothing. And when everything is wrapped up, and wound up and unmanifested, afterwards, Shabishnureva Bhavati, Shabishnureva Bhavati. There is only Narayan. And that Narayan is a portion of a portion of a portion of Krishna. So those who worship without any reservations, without any motivations, without any interruptions, the lotus feet of Krishna are the greatest of all Vedantas, the greatest of all yogis, the greatest of all ascetics. There's no comparison in terms of stature and elevated life to those who render devotional service to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. That is one of the explanations amongst hundreds and hundreds of explanations of this famous verse from the 7th chapter of the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we are very excited about being lucky enough to have none other than Chaitanya Charan join us tomorrow morning at the same time, Caru, Utah, Facebook, for further discussions on this pivotal verse which Lord Chaitanya used to transmit the philosophy of bhakti to such great souls as Sarvabhaumacharya as well as Sanatana Das Goswami. Thanks for being with us. Rob, do you have any concluding thoughts here to share?
There's so much in that, Prabhuji. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but my biggest takeaway is that, I mean, I just got to remember Krishna's plan is just so massive and so expansive that there's no way that I could possibly understand it. And so I just need to have faith that he's got me taken care of, that he's got a plan for me, and that it'll all work out the way that he wants it to, especially if I surrender to him and allow him to use me as his tool.
That's what Bali did. He just took a leap of faith. He trusted the Lord. On one level, the Lord was cheating him, undoing all that he'd worked for, all that he'd strive and planned for. But then again, none of that was uh, none of that was consonant with his real nature. He was just playing a role because that had been his duty in life according to his birth. But his innermost desire was to serve the Lord exclusively. So sometimes we have temporary duties like you have with Kel. We can't really abandon those. We have to go ahead and do our duty. But as long as we have that strong, burning desire within our heart to eventually graduate beyond all temporary concerns and dive into the lotus, the devotional service of the Lord, then the Lord will always direct us and keep us moving forward. Thank you for that. To those who worship without reservations, Anjali says, from Narayan comes light, air, basically everything, and my mama. Yeah, even your mama comes from Narayan. I can do it again. Yep, I can. I made $1 million once. I lost it. My next run, I'll make 2 million. If I lose that, by next time I'll make 4 million. Sadhya Narayan Vishisha says, Hare Krishna here. Yes, put your third step on my head. Yes. Jean. Yeah, great. Britta, the best day ever. She heard our talk on Sunday about choose your way of life. We said that today is the best day of your life. So enjoy the best day of your life. The evening of this day, we get to hear from Chaitanya Charan up in the Salt Lake City Temple. So don't miss that. If you can go in person, I would highly encourage you to do that. I'll be there also. Britta, thanks for joining us. Jean, Jay, Hare Krishna, Brent, Pranams, Natasha, Govinda Dev, Maheshwari. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We're launched into a great new verse here. There will be multiple episodes in this verse, but we've gotten our feet wet here this morning on Motivational Monday, and we'll really dive into it with the help of Chaitanya Charan this time tomorrow. In the meantime, have the best day of your life. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.